there's a bit of someone has to take a bet and a gamble on you, right? In sales, because basically when
Yeah.
you're in sales, what I always say, hiring a rep for any B2B enterprise company is basically $1 million opportunity cost, right? Like, so if you bring somebody in, it's not just what you're paying them in salary. The opportunity cost is pretty large. So a sales leader and a sales manager, when they're recruiting, has to believe the person you're bringing in can deliver results that are at par with that, right?
Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Brynne Tillman and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients, so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited today. We have Ron Gupta as our guest. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Evolution IQ. He's a distinguished figure in the business world, recognized for his dynamic leadership and revenue generation strategies. With a rich background spanning technical operations and executive roles, Ron has significantly influenced various sectors by leading companies through periods of rapid growth and transformative change. His expertise encompasses a broad range of markets and verticals, particularly in leveraging technology for measurable business improvement. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Brynne.
I'm really excited to talk with you today. You've done
Well,
some really great things in a lot of great companies. So I appreciate your insights. Before we jump into your genius, however, we have one question that we ask all of our guests,
sure.
which is, what does making sales social mean to you?
I think from the beginning of time, sales has been a social endeavor. It is about convincing somebody that what you have has value in their lives, whether you're selling them a trinket or enterprise software, right? So it has to contribute value. And for them to believe you, there has to be an authentic relationship, right? That's why used car salesmen always got a bad rap because there was never an authentic relationship. Somebody walked in and you tried to like force whatever you have on the lot on them. That's not selling to me. That's transactional. That's having a transaction. To me, selling and being social about it is about forming a lasting relationship, delivering value, delivering impact, and then backing that value up through the course of the relationship.
Oh, I love that answer. That's terrific. And that's going to dive kind of right into your ethos around sales. So let's start from the beginning. What attracted you to the technology sector, and how did you really find the sales or revenue leadership role for you? Most people don't go, I'm going to go in and be in sales.
Yeah,
So,
and ironically, there are very few people who say, I want to get into sales and then get into sales. So a lot of them who actually want to get into sales wind up doing something else completely. It's really interesting how careers play out because I read this book a long time ago called, I think it was called There's No Elevator to the Top or No Escalator to the Top, but it's basically this executive recruiter who he hired CEOs for Disney and Walmart and that level of recruiting. And then he went back after the fact and asked them questions around the career and how they got to where they are. How did they start, vying for those kind of roles? And it turned out that a lot of it was, circumstances, like just being in the right place at the right time. Sometimes you almost feel fortunate to be where you are. And I kind of feel the same thing in my life. I mean, just starting with software, my undergraduate degree was in civil engineering, so nothing to do with computers, nothing to do with technology. I was deciding what to do for a graduate degree, and some of my friends were going into computer science. So I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. This was late 90s, early 2000s. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I want to go figure that stuff out. So I wound up doing it with a focus on distributed systems. So I got technical, and then I started programming, and I started doing a lot of delivery. And then I figured that's a skill that you have to keep updating every few years, right? Like a technology completely shifts. It goes from Python to Julia or whatever the latest trend is, and you got to develop your skill set around that. Whereas the thing that I always did naturally was relate to people. So I figured, like, how do I take what I understand in technology and the passion I have for technology, but not force myself to upgrade my skill set completely every few years. So that's what got me into sales. And I went and got an MBA to kind of make sure I build around the natural ethos that I had, and build a skill set and a formulative set of tools that helped me in the journey.
So I love that. Sales, often people say I got in it by accident, right? Like that's where I got hired out of college, but for you, it was a conscious choice.
It
And
was.
I'm curious, yeah. So I'm curious, because there are a lot of other things you could have done too. You could be in an operations role, in a human resources role in the technology sector. Sales is hard, right? So tell me a little bit about like why, just go deeper in like why sales, and do you feel like you just had a natural ability? You mentioned people as a reason, but just one
So
level deeper on that would be
yeah,
awesome.
no, well, first of all, a little bit in jest, but have you seen the car sales guys drive and the cars operations guys drive? It's a little different. Just kidding. On a serious note, like I felt like when I was in a room, so even in sales, when I started, it was kind of a progression, right? So I first came into technology. In technology, I started working for a company called CSC, which doesn't exist anymore. It got absorbed by, I believe, Raytheon and Booz Allen.
Good for them.
Yeah, so I was on a partner track there, but it was services and delivery. So it's kind of, building code initially, and then I was running a team that was focusing on business process optimization, right? So it's kind of still very focused around delivery. Um, what I realized very soon was when I was on the selling side of that delivery, I started out on kind of just running people. And then at some point, somebody said, "Hey, Ron, this is great. You got a team of like 50 people. You got to go get revenue for them to be able to go out and deliver." So that was kind of light bulb for me that, hey, tip of the spear is always going to be sales. So I realized when I walked into the rooms and I was having these conversations, I could empathize with what was my customers back then. So I was selling into public sector, I was selling into the technology groups there, but I could relate to their problems. And I came from a world where, I had solved some of that or lived through some of that on a personal level. So it gave me a level of authenticity that kind of, that made that social bond happen, right? And honestly, some of the people that I've sold throughout my career are still friends of mine, not just customers and prospects. So that's where I first started. So it was first from programming, then into kind of delivering software. Then I was like, okay, one of the companies that I was working with, and this is where the happy accident happens, was a company called Pegasystems, and they were brilliant. They were top of the market in what they did, but they struggled in that particular industry, right? So I wound up meeting the CEO from the company, Alan Treffler, who kind of gave me my first shot into sales. And it was directly into sales leadership, where I was carrying a bag, but also running a small team. And I just loved it. I gravitated to that very naturally. I had, amazing results first year onwards. I loved nurturing the team around me. So that's kind of what took me full-fledged into sales and sales management.
I love that. That's great. And yeah, almost everyone, there's a little bit of an accident in there if you end up in
Well,
sales.
there's
So
an
I love
accident, and there's a bit of someone has to take a bet and a gamble on you, right? In sales, because basically when
yeah.
you're in sales, what I always say, hiring a rep for any B2B enterprise company is basically $1 million opportunity cost, right? Like, so we bring somebody in, it's not just what you're paying them in salary. The opportunity cost is pretty large. So a sales leader and a sales manager, when they're recruiting, has to believe the person you're bringing in can deliver results that are at par with that, right? So somebody, and when you're coming in cold from college or like from doing something else like I was, someone has to listen to you, hear you, and believe that you have the capability to deliver on that. Otherwise, that's kind of, there's a bit of luck, but there's a bit of positioning yourself and skill, and then somebody else taking a leap of faith on you.
Okay, so I want to go down that path for a minute, because I think recruiting the right salespeople is one of the biggest challenges sales leaders like yourself faces. Someone in sales can sell themselves very easily, and they may not really be great at sales in the field. So can you give us a couple of tips, or, if there are other sales leaders that are looking to hire that have helped you hire better?
Yeah, what you're talking about is called reflective behavior, right? Because salespeople are very good at being whatever you want them to be, right? So interviewing salespeople are probably some of the most complicated interviewing skills that someone has to develop. So I'm a big believer in trends, right? So if somebody has done something multiple times, they're more likely to be able to do it again, right? And that this kind of goes in the face against what I just said about somebody taking a bet on you, right? And there's a variable there because if it's an opportunity cost, which is slightly lower, if you're going into mid-market and you're willing to go find somebody who has that hustle and can go prove himself in the market, go for it, right? But if you're selling like $1 million products or multi-million dollar products, and it's a very evangelical senior CXO sale, that's not somewhere where you want to put in a rookie, right? You want to bring somebody who's actually been there, done that, proven that they can do it, right? So the part of the interview that I always focus on a lot is historical evidence. I want to know, like, who have you sold to before? Have you sold to them across multiple companies, either you in multiple companies or them in multiple companies, right? Because that shows that there is relationship, that shows that there's a level of thought leadership happening, and you're not just a transactional component of that process. And then the other thing I asked for is like, and this has become a little bit, some states allow it, some states don't. You can't ask somebody's salary, which is fine. And I don't want to know salary because it doesn't really tell me a lot because, Google pays a heck of a lot more than a startup would, right? I don't have a way to measure. But what I want to know is, have you been to club every year you're there, right? Have you empirically had like a $500,000, $1 million, $2 million W-2 year? Because if you've done that, and the reason for that being important is it tells me that you know how to run big deals that are big for whatever market segment you're in. Because if I was selling a core system, right, everybody's selling $20 million deals. So if someone comes and tells me I've sold $30 million last year, what does that mean? Not a whole lot, right? But on the other hand, if you're selling $500,000 solutions and you tell me you sold $30 million, I'd be, holy cow, that's huge, right? So when I ask you that question, I want to know that you can close really large deals for whatever segment you're in. And then I want to know that you have the ability to get the maximum value for it, because people who have done those $1 million years, they know when to walk away. They know when to challenge the prospect. They know when to say, like, you're telling me you want to spend $600,000 on this. Why not one? Why not 800 or why not one, right? Whereas if you get somebody who has never had that big year, they're going to say, oh, wow, 600,000, that's like 80% of my quota. Let's just say yes and move on, right? So it's those things that I look for that are indicative of past trends that are usually indicative of future success.
Oh, I love that. So you've had some great successes. Just transitioned to your role at, I think it was Usher, right? Where you've increased revenue 10 times in 3 years. Talk a little bit about how you did that.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of stuff. I always say sales is awesome because you get to take credit for everything, but it's rarely your effort, right? I mean, so yes, you have to go put yourself out there, but we had an amazing engineering team there, an amazing product team that really, leaned into what we were selling. And we had customers who really saw the value of what we were doing. So a lot of the growth there was actually, we got a lot of new logos, but a lot of the growth was still very organic because customers wound up buying one solution, getting really great results from it, and then moving on to 2 or 3 others, right? So I think it's always easier to have that kind of success when you have like an engine behind you beyond just sales and marketing. And I think Usher was one of those happy confluence of events where everything kind of fell into the right place at the right time.
Yeah, so that's terrific. And I love that you're giving credit to your team, because really, although there is no company without sales, there's also no execution without everybody else. So
And actually, the company I'm at right now, it's kind of interesting because we will tell our prospects that we're essentially a product company, like Evolution IQ. We have 200-ish people, let's say, and like we have, I don't know, 10 people, 12 people who are directly selling, right? We've got like amazing contribution from each one of them. So our revenue, our ARR is very large for a company in the stage we are, but it's not predicated on like people, 20 sellers doing $1 million or 50 sellers doing $1 million. It's like 10 sellers doing $5-10 million each, right? So but our focus then is on product and engineering. Like 80% of our company is really in that space because we want to make sure we build, and especially with AI coming to the fore these days, you want to make sure your technology is rock solid and it's delivering value at all facets.
Oh, so let's go down that road. So
Sure.
talk a little bit about the tech landscape. What trends do you see that are happening? Throw in a little AI and kind of the future of revenue generation in your industry.
Yeah. So AI has come to the fore recently, but it tends to be more around the chat GPT, LLM stuff, right? But the parts of AI that I think are still driving tremendous value are things like predictive analytics, machine learning. That is still really, I think, the main part of the AI engine that's delivering value. What I think is going to start coming to the fore, especially as you go mid-market, and I'm being sold a lot of things myself as a chief revenue officer. I'm a prospect for a lot of people, so a lot of really cool transactional tools that use the other side of AI, which is the Chat GPT, LLM, and being able to take the data we have, condense it, synthesize it, and kind of drive some value from it, right? So summarization and things like that are getting a lot simpler and much more of a table stake these days. But I think still where the value in AI sits in the market today is predominantly on the stuff that was AI before AI got flashy and buzzy, right? So it's the predictive analytics, the machine learning. It's all of the things that you do to kind of take work off someone's plate, but to also drive intelligence into whatever they're doing. So help with decisioning support. So that's definitely part of the landscape. But beyond that, technology is always evolving, right? So it's interesting. My son's 18 and he's going to school to study computer science, and he wanted to go, do a major in cybersecurity. And I'm like, that's great. Go do what you want to do. But here's the thing. When you graduate in 4 years, you don't know if cybersecurity is its own market or it's been vertically integrated into something else. You don't know what's been eaten up by what. Like, now everybody's saying AI is eating the world, but it might be something else 10 years later, right? We went through all of this before as well. We had the whole web cycle where we were like, oh, the web's going to be something great and new, and it is. And it just spans and morphs and creates new career trends, right? So I'm really excited to see what AI does, because I'm seeing new career trends around prompt engineering, for example, right? That wasn't a thing like even a year and a half ago, right? So it's really interesting to see how technology evolves and the market evolves to kind of capitalize on that.
That's very interesting. I'm curious how you see technology with SDRs or BDRs, like and even customer service. And then I'll throw in afterwards a little story that I heard when I was at a conference, at an outbound conference last week. So.
Yeah. So SDR and BDRs, again, they can kind of, one of the things that they spent a lot of time was research, right? So I think technology helps with that significantly, right? You can throw any name. So somebody demonstrated a tool to me recently where you throw the name of a company and it'll spit out like, everything you need to know about it, including mapping to your ICP and your the kind of software you're selling and figuring out who are the key contacts there, tying into Zoom info, picking that information up and putting it in front of you, right? So it does simplify the research aspect of it, right? But I think where, when we talk about what's going to happen to the human resource landscape with AI coming to the fore, I think the skills that people have to work on are going to be the more interpersonal things, the relationship element from your perspective, right? Because that's not something, at least short term, like I watch a lot of science fiction as well, but short term, I don't think machines are going to start building relationships immediately, right? So from a social selling perspective, from a SDR, BDR perspective, being able to understand your company's value proposition, being able to interpret that into what the prospect needs for themselves, for solving their problems, and being able to empathize with where they are in their journey, and having a conversation and a communication that's built around those elements. I think that's what the value of an SDR and BDR channel is today, right? It's no more about doing a ton of like blind research and kind of providing data back to sales or marketing or whoever it is. It's really about building the relationships, understanding the value proposition, doing all the human elements that AI now helps you do, right? Same thing. I mean, even when we think about technology, like Evolution IQ, one of the things that we focus on is we do a lot of decision supports, but we don't want to make decisions because you believe AI is strongest when there's a human in the loop, right? So the SDR then in that circle becomes a human in the loop to have the conversations, to have the more empathetic communication streams that machines today don't. So that's the SDR part. On the customer success part, so I'll only talk about my world. I think customer success in my world, I've typically been in B2B sales. It's been very human centric, and it still is very human centric because your customers want to know you're listening to them, you're hearing them, and you're there for them, right? So they want to be able to pick up a phone and go like, "Hey, Ron, very specifically, this is not working for me, or I have this challenge. How can you help me solve it?" And that becomes a conduit later into sales as well in other parts of the organization, like marketing, product management. So I think CS is a very, very critical element of every company. I haven't seen a lot of AI being applied there, except kind of doing bills and simplifying what you're presenting to the customer. But in terms of, again, the contact and the communication, that seems to still be very human centric.
So I'll share with you, and it is currently, and what I saw is what's coming. So, which I think is pretty cool. And I'm just going to share just briefly because I was blown away. And this is the context, not the actual content. But phone call, ring, ring. Hi, Ron. Have you been? It looks like the last time we talked was about 3 weeks ago. How can I help you today? I'm having trouble logging into my portal. Oh, let me take a look. It looks like you've tried to log in 3 times with the wrong password. So that's why you've been locked out. Let me resend that to you. Okay, are you in? That's fantastic. I also see that you were looking at this page a few times last week. Is this a service you're exploring? Oh, excellent. Just back and forth. If you'd like, I can schedule a time with your account manager to explore that further. You interested? Okay, I've got his calendar up. How is Wednesday at 2:00? That works for you? Would you like me to add anyone else to this invite? George, great. Is that george.smith@abccompany.com? Okay, great. He's been added. Is there anything else you'd like me to add to this calendar invite? I'll connect this in the transcript for this call. No, we're good. Excellent. Well, enjoy talking with our team. And if you have any other questions, call me back. So it pulls from the CRM and all that information, all the client journey in seconds that people can't do. And there's no wait time.
No, I love that. And I've seen scenarios like that. And I think it makes a lot of sense particularly when you're selling something that's a little bit more transactional or it's mid-market where you kind of have pages that people are going to. For us, solutions that I've sold typically have been very bespoke. So the problem definition changes a little bit, but yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm always open to change and I always expect change, right? I just don't know what it is as yet, but that's a really cool use case. I'm sure.
It was really cool use case. And it's not like available everywhere, but this is like where the vision is that it's going.
Sure.
So, yeah,
sure.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, but having said that, like here's the counterpoint to that. Like I fly a lot, right? So I fly with United and have status with United. The thing I love about my status, when my parents have a problem with United and they call them, they have a transaction that's run through an AI layer. So you wind up talking to machines for like 20 minutes before you can actually get to what you're trying to get done, right? Whereas like me, again, separate relationship because I fly as much as I do, but I have somebody pick up the phone in 30 seconds. And usually the transaction takes 4 minutes, right? So I think the sunny day scenario that you walk through is amazing. What we want to make sure is that can apply to every context. So when you come in and you go like, hey, ring, ring, but this time the story is a little different. And it's not like my login doesn't work, but it's like the server crashed at 3 a.m. in the morning. What is the empathy part of the resolution that comes in, right? So I've seen some really good demos about that as well, but like it's still evolving in my mind.
Yeah, for me, the idea that I feel like I'm talking with someone. Number one, that I'm not pressing 1, pressing 3, and then hitting 0 7 times because I'm frustrated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's this wave of AI is as pervasive as it is because there's a question about if you can have a conversation on a blind screen and be able to tell if it's a human and the computer on the other end, that kind of shows the efficacy of AI. And the current generation of AI, it's very hard to tell. It's very, very hard to tell. So no doubt, I mean, scenarios like that could absolutely start playing out pretty soon.
Yeah. And one of the things, I'm probably a half a generation older than you are. And when I started in sales, we did not have email or cell phones, right? We just didn't. And I remember getting email signed to me from, I was at Dun& Bradstreet. It was called CC mail. It wasn't even email. It was for, I don't even remember what that was, it stood for, internal. And I remember thinking, how am I going to fit this into my day? I didn't even recognize how it was going to help my job productively. And I think over time, right, that's what our cell phones have done. And I think that's what AI will do. I'm not sure it's going to cost us jobs, but I think it's going to make us more efficient and more productive. So that's my hope anyway.
I think the job market will evolve, right? So it always does, to accept and adopt new technology.
Yes, so that's amazing. So if you were to look back on your career, tell me a little bit about, did you have mentors, or did you mentor people that helped guide you into your current ethos?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's probably the most important thing that anybody starting anything out new should do, right? Find somebody who's been there, done that, and not just one. Like, you'll find through stages of a career, you're going to have different people who can add value to your lives. And, it should be a two-way street. You should be able to contribute somehow or the other. But to me, absolutely. I've had a few people I worked for, people I felt like I could run through stone walls for, right? And I wanted to be leaders like them, and I wanted to kind of understand how they do it. So I learned a lot from them. But then you have to figure out what's genuine for you as well, because you can't be them. That's the one thing I had to realize. Because for a while I tried, because there were some people I idolized enough where I was like, I want to be just like you when I grow up, right? And then I realized that I didn't have whatever it was, like whether it was the charisma, the empathy, whatever. There was some quotient for them that made them them, and I wouldn't have that. So then you have to take what you learn from them and infuse your own around it. So that's my journey, and I've had a number of really amazing mentors, and I still talk to a lot of them today. Some of whom are in roles that have grown. Like, they're still like a few levels ahead of me. The CROs at much larger companies, or the CEOs at large companies. But there's some who are now at the same, kind of the same level I am at, but there's still so much that I can get from them because they've done it for a longer time. So I always I always wind up spending time with them. And then the same thing, I try, like, first of all, for people who work with me, I always try and, if there's things that I've been through and journeys that I've had, I try and share that. So hopefully that helps people. But there's actually a handful of folks who I have formal one-on-one mentoring time with. So we go over challenges, we talk about things that are evolving, landscape. So we have these guided, structured discussions on a frequent basis. So I would strongly recommend that for anybody getting into any new career field.
This has been wonderful. I so appreciate your time. Really, you've got some great brilliance, and I can see why your career has been so successful in the revenue world. But before we end this, I always ask, what questions should I have asked you that I didn't?
What you should have asked me that you didn't. I guess, what is the one regret that I have in my career?
Oh, okay. So Ron,
We should
what's the
ask the
one?
next guest that. I should not answer that. Ask the next guest that.
Yeah. What's the one regret that you wish you had done something differently?
I mean, I don't think it's different. I think it's hindsight being 2020. I wish I'd done certain things at certain times a little bit earlier. I don't know. Maybe it's buying crypto early. I don't know. I'm just kidding about that as well. But it's looking back at my career. There are areas and juxtapositions and choices that I made that in certain phases, ultimately in aggregate, it all worked out, right? So, and that's what I tell people, especially teenagers. Like when I talk to my son and it feels like the world's like crashing around them in any given day, I'm like, look, in aggregate, it all works out, right? Your point in time situation might not be ideal. So I put myself a couple of times where I prioritized the wrong things. And I wound up in situations where had I had the foresight, I would not have found myself in today. So I think that's probably, I probably wasted 3 years of my 3 to 5 years of my career, which I could have done something different. And hopefully that I've had a bigger impact on people around me more than myself. So that's probably the only regret I have.
So my oldest stepson, I think in 8th grade, was given an assignment. What is one thing you would change in your life? And he had to write an essay. And his whole essay was on how I wouldn't change a thing because I don't know how it would have ended up. Like
Fair.
if I changed that, I might have been in a completely different place.
Was he a philosophy major? Because that sounded pretty deep.
He ended up really kind of in a political science world, but he's not doing that now. He's more in leadership and management. But yeah, I mean, it was just, I was blown away by that, at a young age to have that kind of philosophy. Like, no, like maybe I think I'd want to change that, but who knows where I'd end up. So anyway, shout out to him. He's so smart. Anyway, thank you so much for your insights. I know that you've offered some great content that will help other sales leaders and emerging sales leaders. So if someone would like to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
I'm old-fashioned, so LinkedIn's probably still the best way to get a handle on me.
I love that that's old-fashioned now. Like that's the old way.
Yeah, no, I just meant I'm not giving you a Twitter handle and an Instagram, whatever they call it. Like it's good old-fashioned LinkedIn.
Me too. So I love that. Ron, thank you so much for your insights. And to all of our listeners, when you're out and about, don't forget to make your sales social.
Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.